Welcome to the SMARKETING Show, hosted by award-winning B2B sales performance coach Rick Lambert, who has been selected by many of the world's most recognized companies to help them market and sell to win. Let's join Rick now.
Welcome to today's SMARKETING Show. I think if you're a business leader, marketing executive, sales leader, you're going to like my guest today, Kap Chatfield. Here's a guy that comes with video movie making background training, who's evolved himself into a business where he does shows for companies to help them tell their story. So today's all about helping you with ideas to tell your story. Now, Kap, welcome to the show today. I know you host your own, so it's nice to be sitting in the guest seat, or maybe different anyway. Could you let the folks know where you're coming from? Because I think you got a really unique background, your schooling when it comes to movie making, and why that's applicable to telling company stories.
You bet. Well, Rick, first of all, thanks for having me on your show today. We had you on ours just a few weeks ago, B2B podcasting, and we both kind of live in the same world in regards to helping businesses tell stories that ultimately grow their business. And so this is super awesome, super grateful to be here. And yeah, just to kind of give some background to who I am, I'm a CEO of a company out here in Omaha, Nebraska, the middle of nowhere in the United States of America, right in the heartland. And I'm a husband, I'm a father of 3. And my journey with marketing, which is really what we're doing, we're in the world of storytelling for businesses, which is really what marketing is all about. It began really actually before I went to film school. My background, I was not the most athletic kid. I liked sports, but I was more of an artsy type. And really, I was a skateboarder. And in the world of skateboarding, one of the things that we did was we would always take our camera with us when we'd go downtown and try to film each other's tricks. And then we'd have all this footage, and I decided, okay, I got to learn how to actually piece this footage together and make something interesting out of it. And so that's what began this journey of understanding how to do video editing. And I just fell in love with the process. Lo and behold, kind of came to the end of my high school career, and my dad was saying, hey, what college do you think you want to go to? I wasn't really much of an academic. And so I said, you know what? I don't know if I really want to go to college. And my dad said, well, we have this college fund saved up for you, so you're going to go to school, but you pick something that you want to do. And he actually offered up, like, why don't you consider doing film school? And I didn't even know that was really a legit option. And so I was like, man, let's look at some options for film school. Found the University of Miami, which was an exciting experience for lots of different reasons, as you can imagine, not just for film, but I went down there for 3.5 years. I got my bachelor's in communications in motion pictures while I was there. And that's what began this journey of really understanding what it means to be a filmmaker, not just in craft, but also in career and profession. And since then, I've kind of taken some of the skill sets I've learned from film, traditional, full feature length film production, and how do I apply those same principles to help businesses tell their stories?
And this is exactly why I thought you'd be awesome for our audience. And for those of you that watch SMARKETING Show or follow me on LinkedIn, I'm a big sponsor of video. Last week, I'm in a conference with 800 dealers in Orlando. I sit in the breakout sessions, and guess what? Everybody's saying they're moving towards video. But I think a lot of people, Kap, unlike you, don't have professional video training or experience. So they're wrestling with, how do I tell my story? Because they don't want to make a mistake. And I think it could be a huge power play to give them a competitive advantage versus their competitors still trying to figure it out. So today, could you open up and talk a little bit about what you think makes a great story? And maybe that includes on video.
100%. One of the things that I took away from film school, which was the most valuable piece of training that I got, because here's the reality. I tell this to a lot of up and coming creatives, not just business leaders, but creatives that want to turn their craft into a career. A lot of them wonder, like, hey, which film school should I go to? Whatever, like, do I need a degree? And the reality is my degree isn't super helpful on paper with me getting clients. I mean, I don't have customers coming to me saying, hey, you do great video work, but let me see your degree. Like, they're just not asking that. However, one of the things that I learned about film in film school is that there is a science to telling a good story. The most valuable thing that I learned, I'll just say this, was learning narrative structure. And once you learn narrative structure, you can't unsee it in any movie that you watch. In fact, it kind of ruins movies for you. I'll be watching a movie with my wife. We love thriller movies, especially like psychological thrillers. And it's rare that we watch a movie that actually kind of takes me on this journey of like, I need to figure out what happens, because as soon as the movie opens, I already know who's going to die, who's going to be the killer, who's going to like it all. There's such a formula to it. And once you learn the formula, it's amazing how you can see that formula play out, and not just in movies, but in great advertising, even emails, even LinkedIn written posts. Like you can see the structure play out all over the place. And so I can break down that structure for your audience, Rick, if that's okay.
I think this is why you're on, because
cool.
A lot of us we want to tell a story, but there's clearly a science to it. So that's why I really thought you'd be of value today.
Sure. Well, I'd love to. So I'll share it like this. Basically, I'll even share a graphic that I know that your editor can put on the screen as I'm sharing this, but we call this the narrative arc. And the reason why it has this, it almost kind of looks like, if you've ever been to Cedar Point in Michigan, it's like there's this massive, or there was, I don't know if they still have it, but it was this roller coaster called the Millennium Force. And it was like this massive, like not a very sexy roller coaster with all these loops and stuff, but it had this giant like crescendo pinnacle where you go to the top of this roller coaster and then you come all the way down. That's kind of the shape that we're looking at here. And at the beginning of the arc, has this like loop, this it begins at a high point and then it goes low and then it goes really high. At the beginning of that point, that's what we call the hook. And so if you can also just imagine, like the y-axis of this arc is going to be time elapsed for the duration of the story. The x-axis. And then the y-axis is going to be like emotional intensity that you're going to experience on this ride. At the very beginning, it starts out with something that's going to grab your attention. We call this the hook in filmmaking. You've probably experienced this even in keynote speeches, where somebody comes out and they just punch you right in the nose with an opening statement or an opening illustration. Even I'm also an assistant pastor at a church here in Omaha, Nebraska. It's the same way with opening up a sermon. You want to open up with something that's going to grab people's attention. It's the same with movies. And in movies, any good movie, you're going to notice that in the first 3 minutes, something significant happens. It's the bomb that blows up, the damsel in distress gets carried away, whatever it is, the bank gets robbed. That in that first 3 minutes, it's the hook. It's what grabs your attention. It sets the stage for what the entire movie is going to be about. So every movie, every great story starts with a hook. Now, after the hook, you grab the audience's attention. Now you can kind of lay out the context. Who's the main character? Where are they from? What are some of their quirks? What are they interested in? What's their desire? What problems stand in their way? All of that context, it helps you understand, hey, this is who we're going to follow. And it also kind of foreshadows the journey that character is going to go on to solve the problem that was immediately shown in that hook. After the context, there's this point in the story called the inciting incident. And that's basically where this character is finally invited onto this journey to kind of overcome their own personal problems, but ultimately to solve this greater narrative problem in the scope of this entire story. So they go on this journey, and now you're starting to see them kind of go from like this on that arc, this kind of boring place in the context where it's not a lot of emotional intensity. Now they're starting to climb the mountain of the narrative. They're going on this journey. They're fighting some battles along the way, all the way up to the climax of the story, which is where their personal will, their personal insecurities, their personal weaknesses are tested to the highest degree for them to kind of like solve the problem. It's when Frodo is like, he's at Mordor, he's going to throw the ring into the fiery pit of Mordor, or it's when Luke Skywalker is going to blow up the Death Star, right? Like, I'm sure your audience can kind of follow along with some of these examples. Or it's when the guy is going to finally propose to the girl of his dreams, or knock the bully out in the schoolyard to win her over, whatever it is. It's like, that's the moment where the ultimate test happens. Do they have what it takes? And in any good story, we know that that's where they can prove to themselves and prove to the world that they have what it takes. And then after that climax is the resolution. And that's where they get to kind of, you see everything fall into place and they live happily ever after. Now, I want to share that because it sounds like, oh my gosh, like it's clear, it makes sense. I can even kind of see that in my mind as I'm thinking about my favorite Marvel movies or my favorite rom-coms or whatever. But how do I break that down into something simple and bite-sized that I can apply to my business? Well, we break it down into these 4 P's. And if you can think about these 4 P's, write down these 4 P's and think about your business narrative in the perspective of these 4 P's, it's going to simplify everything for you. So the first P that you want to start with is the person. The person, this is the main character of the story. And you want to really just kind of answer these 2 questions. Who are they? And what do they ultimately desire? What do they want? Where do they want to go in life? How much money do they want to make? How do they want to feel about themselves and about their business? So you just you can take that general question and think about who's the person that you're called to serve with your business and what do they care about? That's the first P. The second P is the problem. Now, there's no good story without a really grave problem. So think about that person and think about the problem that they face. And now we break down this problem into kind of 3 different categories. There's an internal problem, an external problem, and an eternal problem. The internal problem is what's going on. Let's start with the external one, actually. The external problem is the easiest problem to identify because it's the one that's kind of glaring, it's in their face. So let's say that you do a business and you're serving, I'll share an example. One of our clients is a staffing agency for skilled labor. So the person that they're serving is going to be a company leader that is trying to find skilled workers that can help them build these big buildings or whatever. And so that's what they want. The problem is that they can't find these skilled workers. There's a massive skilled labor shortage in America right now. So that's the external problem. But what's the internal problem? Well, the internal problem is, man, this makes them feel like anxiety at night because they wonder, man, do we have the ability to fulfill these projects that we're being hired by these big clients for? So there's an anxiety problem. There's a fear problem. There's a, do I have what it takes problem? There's a frustration problem, a confusion problem. Where do I find these workers? So you want to mine out what are those emotional problems that person's going to be feeling. And then finally, the eternal problem. The eternal problem is this 30,000 foot view of hey, why is this just wrong? And so you could kind of fill in the gaps with okay, for our client, for example, the eternal problem that this violates is if you have a project that you want to build, you should be able to find the right workers to fill this void. So it's a general truth that this problem violates, right? So that's the second P. The third P is the plan. This is where you, as the business owner, you lay out the plan. You're like the Gandalf to Frodo. You're the Obi-Wan to Luke Skywalker. You're the Jedi that comes in. You're the expert who's also empathetic, and you can lay out a very simple and systematic plan to help that person overcome their problem and get to where they want to go. And this comes back to the fourth P, the promise. This is the happily ever after. This is what is that person's life going to look like? What's their business going to look like? What's their emotional well-being going to look like? What's their relationships going to look like? Because they have taken action on the plan that you have presented for them. Those are the 4 Ps: person, problem, plan, promise. If you can nail down those 4, you have yourself a very compelling narrative.
So, okay, first of all, thank you for sharing that. When I was very early in our digital marketing agency, I sat with writers who talked a lot about the hook and the inverted, pyramid. How, Rick, you got to hook them early because the more people read, the less people read, the further you go into something. Very similar in the storytelling. What about mistakes? So Kap, we see a lot of clients, right? And a lot of businesses, they get it. Hey, I got to get on video. I got to tell a story, whether it's a micro story on a LinkedIn post, or it's more of a story about their business. I'm going to ask, by the way, Kap, in a minute. We talked before the show. I'm going to throw him a scenario, and he doesn't know the scenario, but it will relate to a common business we work with, and how and I'm going to use an office technology provider as an example, how he might tell your story. But before we get to that, what about mistakes you see people making with their story? the way they package it, present it, whatever? What are you seeing, and what should they do?
The number one problem that businesses face when crafting their narrative is they mistake themselves as the main character of the story when they're truly the guide in the story. And so what do I mean by that? What I mean is everybody, every person is the hero of their own story, right? I'm the hero of my own story. And we try to be humble, we try to be other centered. But the reality is like, we're trying to figure out what character we play in the narrative of human history, or the narrative of our industry, or the narrative of our community, whatever. We are the main character. We're trying to understand who we are, and we have a place that we're trying to go, right? The problem is that when businesses create this narrative, they position themselves as the hero of the story. And you see this in how businesses communicate their product or their features. And it's all very like business product feature centric. It's here's our value prop. Here's what we do. Here's our features. Here's why we're the best. And it's very me centric. And the problem with that is when other people who would be the person that we want to hear this story, when they hear those stories, the immediate thing that comes to their mind is, that's great. You're the hero of your story. That's awesome. But there's only room for one hero in my story, and I'm the hero of my story. And so all of a sudden, these businesses that have very meaningful stories to be telling, they're not being heard by the market because they're not positioning themselves as the right character. We also say this in our business. We say that there's two types of content on the internet. There's the content that you want to consume, and there's the content that interrupts the content that you want to consume. One's a show and one's an ad.
Yeah.
And communicating your story with you as the hero of the story, it's like communicating your value prop as an ad rather than as a show, which makes the audience truly the main character of the story.
Can I ask you, give me, sorry to interrupt. Can I ask you to give me an example of how, because I think you're bang on. We see so many things that are on the web now and customers tell us to produce. It's all about them. We call it chest pounding, right? And
I like that.
So how do you flip it around so the hero of the story is really your target persona customer? It sounds like that's what you're suggesting, but how do you do that? Like, what would be an example?
Let's go through the scenario that you wanted to share right now, and I can unpack that for you in real time.
Okay, great. So again, this is cold with Kap here. So I'll talk as long as you're ready to go with your answer. If you need me to bite.
Let's go. No, I got plenty of time. Let's do this.
I've seen you on LinkedIn. I know you can dance to any tune quickly. All right. So we work with a lot of office technology dealers or providers. Okay, Kap. So one of the things that's emerging, obviously, is this threat of ransomware. And in many cases, the story comes out of our technology customer arena, we'll call it. Hopefully not our customers, but we see a lot of companies going, hey, if you're afraid of ransomware, let me just pound you 16 times with everything we've got in our certifications and our program and our this and our that. So I can see it, it's so real, them being the hero of their story. So how would you take something like the threat of, ransomware attack and really dovetail into the fact that they've got, as you called it, a solution really to those, but make the customer the hero of the story as opposed to we'll call it the product or solution provider? Like, how would you flip that around?
I don't even know if it's necessarily that things need to be flipped around, because I think that there's a lot of ammo there to work with. Mm-hmm. But I think it's like you're cutting to the chase, to the climax way too quickly. So I guess to kind of mine the story out a little bit better. So what is the ransomware? What problems does that make this business owner face?
So what ransomware does, just in layman terms, would be it'll basically lock up a company's access to their confidential data. That could be financial information, customer records, employee information, to the point where the company can't operate because they, in most cases, can't access their information. This causes downtime. This causes, sometimes damage to brand. And they have the choice whether they're going to pay the ransom to get their information back, which in many cases, they don't even know if they're going to get it. But if they don't have basically a proactive approach to preventing ransomware, they're inevitably going to get into this situation, small, medium, large enterprise, where someone's going to attack their environment. And the companies that we represent a lot of times are able to help them, mitigate that risk through detection, avoidance, business recovery, so they can park their data in the cloud, et cetera. But it's like, if you think of it as home security, sooner or later, your business is going to have a bad guy come to the door and try and get in. So the question is, are you going to be set up with the right, preventative measures, reactionary measures? That's kind of the threads of the story.
So these typical business owners, they're not waking up every day thinking, I need to solve my ransomware problem. They're thinking about their business, and then ransomware becomes this kind of blindsided thing that comes and disrupts their entire personal narrative. And now they have to figure out how to overcome this issue.
Correct.
So what does this business person typically care about day to day? They probably just care about, hey, I just want to grow my business. I just want to keep moving the thing forward, keep serving my team, keep serving our customers. And then this thing comes out of nowhere and disrupts that.
It's a destroyer. Yes.
So what I would do is I would be thinking about this person and not kind of remove the ransomware out of the equation, because the ransomware it's not even the main thing, or the ransomware solution, I should say. Mm-hmm. The person that you're going to probably be serving best isn't even just a business owner that has this problem. It's going to be the business owner that wants to feel like, I'm just going to throw out like an analogy. They're going to want to feel like Liam Neeson in Taken when his daughter is held ransom. Mm-hmm. And he needs to get his daughter back.
Exactly.
And they're no longer just a business owner. They are Liam Neeson, who is on a mission to go rescue that daughter so that he can go back to running, or he or she could go back to running that business. Mm-hmm. And so that's the type of person that you're really trying to communicate to. It's the type of person who's like, yes, I want to protect this vision. I want to protect this organization. There's too much at stake for us to deal with all of that stuff. And we're going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that our customers are protected and our employees are protected. And so even as I'm communicating that, you can see that like the narrative is kind of shifting. I'm not even talking about the product and its features. I'm talking about, hey, this is who you are as the business owner. This is what you want. This is what you care about. And let's fuel that up. Let's fan the flames of you being a protector of your business and of the legacy of your enterprise. And so with that, like I would even say, now you kind of have a narrative of like, hey, here's the main character, right? Here's what they care about. Here's what keeps them up at night. Here's what makes them feel encouraged, and here's what makes them feel discouraged. I would even have like, here's an idea for a show. And I mean, feel free to take this, by the way. I'm just like totally spitballing, but here's an idea for a show that you could do to help attract that right tribe. You can make a show completely about business leaders who have been in ransom type situations where their back was all of a sudden against the wall, and maybe they got audited for something that they're like, what? Like we've been doing everything by the book, crossed every T, dotted every I, and now we're getting audited. And now like we have a PR issue. How do we handle this situation? And that like you have a show where every episode you're interviewing business leaders to talk about how they overcame that scenario to protect their assets, to protect their employees, and to protect their customers. And what you're going to do is, if that's the narrative of every episode, you're inviting these business leaders on that are sharing those stories. The people that you invite on that show, they're already in the mindset of, hey, I'm a protector. I'm a protector of what I have here. And so they're going to be the type of person where it's like, hey, if you're a protector, this happens to be the perfect solution for protectors like you, because you're already in that mindset. But then what you're also doing is you're attracting an audience of business owners who are more risk management minded. Mm-hmm. And so a solution like this is going to be really helpful for them, because there's going to be business leaders, I'm sure, who are like for me, for example, I'm like not risk adverse to a fault, where I'm like, I'm just like, charge amount and let's go. Thankfully, my business partner is more, he thinks more about the risk management side.
Mhm.
And so that would be a show that would be super attractive to him, because he'd look at that product and he'd say, man, that's it. So what you're doing is you're turning your product into a story that attracts the right audience. And then all of a sudden, hey, by the way, this show is brought to you by Ransomware Eliminator 3000.
Mhm. Mhm.
And 30-second spot, it's like, hey, for protectors of businesses just like yourself, this can help you overcome issues that you don't even know could be creeping around the corner. So that's how I would lay it out.
Okay. First of all, I've never seen a company in the industry do what you just did. What I thought was very relevant there is, if you go back to, so many times on the videos, and I'm using video as the medium to communicate the story.
Sure.
It has the person from the company providing them ransomware services on there, telling the whole story. And I really love the way you flipped it around, so that the story is more about peer to peer telling what they did in relatable situations. And then at the end, you basically step in and say, look, we can help people like this if you're in that situation. But anyway, very, very creative. Good job, buddy. And I know, just for those of you that don't know, if you're not following Kap on LinkedIn right now, I highly recommend it. He's very relevant. I just really think you do a great job with your little mini stories on LinkedIn that you do. Good sense of humor in there too, which I appreciate.
Thank you.
As we head for home, like, people know your business, or they should know, like, you're creating shows or mini movies, we'll call it, for businesses, basically using the methodology you spoke of. If I'm a business leader and I say, hey, I know we got to do more with video, we need to tell our story a little more, like sell it versus tell it. Do you have any kind of suggestions for, how people can create a great story? I know we talked about the P's and that, but just as we wrap up, like, someone's watching right now, they're going, hey, that guy made some good points, we should do it. But, do you have any kind of, tactical steps someone should take to create a great story for their business?
Yeah, I would say the first thing that you need to do is you need to start with the business objective in mind, because it's a long game approach. I mean, we live in a world right now where content is how you stay in front of people on a day-to-day basis. And I'm sure you feel the same way. Like, I'm in this business and it takes me, like, someone has to have a lot of touches with me for me to actually kind of move in a different direction. It's just an avalanche of information and content out there, but that's not an excuse to get in the game. It just requires us to manage our expectations a little bit better. And if you don't have an objective, like a clear objective for your business of what your content strategy or your story strategy is going to do for you, it's going to fizzle out.
What would be the example of an objective though, Kap? Like, can you give an example?
Yeah, I could give you five different objectives. So when we work with our customers, we say pinpoint your objective based off of one of these 5 things. Number 1, you want to increase sales, which who doesn't? But it's really more about, especially in the B2B space, we want to accelerate pipeline creation by engaging target accounts. We want to collaborate with them and our content, because it'll bring value to our audience, but it'll also initiate some strategic relationships with those people from a targeted account sales perspective. Number 2 is going to be marketing. So marketing, branding, just creating tons of content, a long game approach but I believe has the greatest ROI at the end of the day, with the compound interest of how content kind of performs for you. That's the second objective. The third objective is going to be training. We have one customer that we're working with right now that wants to create content, create a narrative to help people in their own organization stay engaged with the vision and continue to learn the thought leadership of the C-suite level. And they're doing that by creating this narrative and creating consistent content for their own hybrid/remote organization. I think it's a brilliant strategy for them. The fourth is recruiting. So if your business objective is like, hey, we need to recruit new talent right now. I mean, that's a big thing. We're in the middle of the great resignation.
Huge.
And what a strong narrative and a strong content strategy to deploy that narrative can do is it can actually attract and groom the right talent to your organization and it can significantly cut down your onboarding time. I've seen this with, not with one of our customers, but a guest that we've had on our show. It was one of the backside advantages of doing their own show is they're recruiting top talent that already believes in their company vision, that's already understands their language because they've listened to every episode of their podcast, of their show. The fifth and final objective is going to be, oh man, I'm blanking on it now. What was it? Oh, customer service. So I really believe, you can use the show model, the storytelling model to attract new customers, to even attract new talent, to serve your current employees, but you can also use as a way to retain customers. I know that there's, especially in consultancies, if you run a consultancy, some sort of agency that your thought leadership is your IP, that's how you win business, that's how you solve problems for your clients. To do some sort of behind the paywall narrative / content strategy that's exclusive to your customers, golly, that can be such a valuable way to keep them engaged. So that they feel like, man, I'm like, every time I watch a video, every time I listen to a podcast, every time I read an article or get an email from this vendor of mine, I feel like they're fueling the narrative that I feel like I'm the main character of. And that can be super helpful to help you grow your business. So that would be the first place that I would start, is defining that objective. Then the second thing I would say is defining that audience based off of what that objective is, based off of the 4 P's that I shared with you earlier. And then finally, number 3 is clarifying that narrative, knowing what your objective is, who that audience is, what's the narrative. And then ultimately, to be completely honest, the production after that, it's almost irrelevant once you have that core narrative in place.
When you say the production's irrelevant, can I assume you're saying don't get too caught up in everything being perfect in the video production side? It's more the content, the storyline, et cetera. Is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying. And this is coming from a guy that's also using a DSLR camera for this very interview, as well as an XLR, microphone. So I'm not trying to sound hypocritical when I say that, but what I am saying is, Rick, I mean, like, for example, you're using a webcam on your laptop. You're not using a fancy microphone. You might have a USB microphone plugged in, but you haven't overthought your production value. You just know, hey, I have a message to tell and I got to show up consistently. And I've just seen way too many business leaders get caught up with, well, I don't have the right microphone, or I don't have the best video editing software, and it keeps them from showing up. It's all about just showing up consistently.
Couldn't agree more. It's funny, everything you talk about too, I believe applies to, I'll call it micro videos, 60-second sprints that we might post on LinkedIn. You posted a great one the other day. You were walking, hey, here's 3 things. You set it up. Well, I won't say whatever the hook was, but you set it up. I'm going to tell you this, which hooked me in to want to follow you for the 3. A few weeks ago, I was, and I spoke on a previous show, a company hired me to go down and coach basically a bunch of their top salespeople how to create videos for LinkedIn. And it was so simple. Basically, they just didn't know what to say. They didn't have a swim lane to start, and they didn't want to look foolish. They were caught up, like you're saying, hey, I don't have the right camera. And sometimes, there's a saying in hockey, you just got to throw your heart over the boards and your body will follow. Like, just do it. And what we were doing with them is storytelling and saying, hey, look, the hook at the beginning is, can you relate to this? And then, the reason I asked is because I was talking to a customer, and here's what that customer went through. So we were using that kind of storyline. And at the end, it was more of a humble, oh, by the way, if you can relate to that disaster that guy had, maybe you want to call us. Anyway,
that's good.
I didn't do my university training where you are, but I learned from watching you online, big guy. So I'm following. Hey, first of all, congrats on being a dad 3 times over. I know you just recently had one, and your eyes don't even show it, by the way.
Oh man, that means the world, because I feel it. I feel it today, but it's a blessing, man. He's 2 months old and healthy.
It never ends. That roller coaster you talked about. Yeah, that one never ends. Anyway, thanks, buddy. Now listen, I really appreciate you sharing your insights today, because you come from a different angle on a very common goal. Wishing you and your team the best of luck, by the way. I think you guys are under a great thing, creating shows for businesses that just don't know really where to get started. Now, if someone wants to engage with you, Kap, what would you suggest? How do they find you?
Man, I'm just trying to keep it really simple these days. I really believe in the power of using social media to build relationships. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Kap, Kap Chatfield. search for me. I'm sure we'll also put a link somewhere in the description of this video. I'll leave that to you, Rick. But here's what I would say is connect with me and please send me a direct message and please don't try to sell me right away. We get so many DMs. I'm sure you guys do too, with people trying to, sell you a product right away. Just let me know that you heard me on the SMARKETING Show. I just love to connect. I'm out here to build relationships. And I know that that's the greatest currency you can have. So please connect with me.
And guys or ladies watching, Kap's a good dude. You can trust him. And he may be able to give you more ideas for your business. Anyway, Kap, thanks so much for joining me today, talking about storytelling. And hopefully our audience now is well prepared to start storytelling to win. Thanks, and see you next episode on the SMARKETING Show.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Rick.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the SMARKETING Show. If you enjoyed today's show, please like, share, and subscribe to get the latest B2B insights to help you market and sell to win.